Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 152. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who has liked, shared, commented, supports the show, has subscribed to the show over these years. All that support, all your support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guest today. Also want to take this time to thank our sponsors. Samson Equipment has been providing uncompromising quality for over 40 years. Samson products are long-lasting and made of the highest quality equipment on the market. Each project is built from the ground up with the ability to customize every need. The team at Samson focuses on developing the highest quality relationships with their customers, in addition to providing them unparalleled quality in every piece of equipment bearing the Samson name. Learn more about Samson's professional weight room solutions and the Samson standard at samsonequipment.com. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. Trusted since 2012, Cerberus is making the best strongman, powerlifting, and strength sports equipment and accessories, ensuring the ultimate competitive edge. Every one of their products is tried, tested, and proven by top-level athletes worldwide. So if you're in the market for the highest quality strength and conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to check out CerberusStrength.com and use promo code STRENGTH_game to save on your next order. Also want to thank our sponsor, Sport Kilt. Born in Scotland and stitched in America, Sport Kilt offers the highest quality custom kilts and accessories. Every Sport Kilt is made in the USA of machine washable polyester blend fabric, offering an alternative to the traditional heavy wool kilt. Make sure you check out the No Pants All Glory selection of kilts and shop the best collection of high quality American-made sport kilts and accessories at sportkilt.com and use promo code TSG to receive an extra 10% off your next order. And in this week's episode, I am joined by Kayla Girgen. Kayla is a registered dietitian, certified personal trainer, and founder of the online wellness community, Sugar and Strength Academy. Her background spans clinical nutrition, personal training, and years of firsthand experience coaching women through transformative lifestyle changes. As a registered dietitian and nutrition entrepreneur, she founded KG the RD LLC in 2020 on a mission to help high-achieving women lose weight without eating perfectly. Prior to venturing on her own, she worked as a clinical dietitian at CentraCare from 2020 to 2021, a lead dietitian and operations manager at Profile by Sanford Health from 2018 to 2020, and a dietitian assistant at Hy-Vee from 2017 to 2018, in addition to multiple internships within the weight loss and nutritional space. Girgen is also an ACE personal trainer and has been certified since 2013. She's a freelance nutrition writer and has been featured on many popular media outlets, including Men's Health, Insider, Eat This, Not That, and Parade. In addition, Girgen is the author of a new book, Ruck Fit, Build Strength and Endurance by Walking with Weight. This practical guide includes beginner-friendly training plans, rucking tips to build strength and endurance, and strategies to prevent injury and fuel your resiliency. Girgen loves to read, hike, and bike in her home state of Minnesota and is happily married to her best friend and business adventure partner, Jeremy. Like I said, I'm excited to have her on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Kayla Girgen. What's going on, everybody? Today I'm excited. We've got Kayla Girgen on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you on. Like I said, you wear multiple different hats. You've been in different professions, kind of on the dietitian, nutritional side, the wellness side of things, as well as being a certified personal trainer. So you're doing things yourselves. you've kind of have a story that have gotten you to the place that you are now. You're still training and now author for your new book, Ruck Fit, which I know we're going to talk about in length later on. But before we kind of get into just career path, like especially the book, how nutrition and kind of your training has influenced what you're doing now, kind of take me back, like what really got you started, like in the strength game, kind of sports you played growing up, and kind of got you to be active and still doing things like you are now.
Yeah. Yeah, I know I was joking with you before this. Like I never know where to start, like what piece of the puzzle to like go in at. So every time I tell this, I feel like it's a different version, but I will say that in high school I was not I wanted to be, I should say, active in a lot of sports, but having military family members who, went off to war, I ended up kind of backing out of things like softball and volleyball were some big ones for me just to help out with a family business. So I wasn't like, a big high school or collegiate athlete. And I think like later in my career, when I think about it, like I've been very much of like that support staff, I think, for other people who are doing really cool things like competing. I have like one client in particular. Today she's running a 100-mile race that, we've been working on fueling for. And she's amazing. She's done like bodybuilding shows and like, incredible endurance feats like this. But I really love like playing that support role again. I will say like kind of thinking about where things started for me. I out of high school had no idea what I wanted to do. Like I ended up going like pre-pharmacy because I thought it was, something that would be essentially like a good paying job. And then I got into my first chemistry class and I was just like way in over my head. Like chemistry, from what I was familiar with in high school, we were just like burning stuff with Bunsen burners and watching TV. Like I didn't have a whole lot of like background, like not, knocking my high school teacher, but we just like we didn't do anything in that class. So when I got to college chemistry, I was just like blown away in all the wrong ways. So I ended up like floundering a little bit. I changed my major. I was like pre-pharmacy, I was business, I was psychology, and ended up leaving after my first year just because I didn't have the funds to really like sit there and pay for college tuition that I didn't know what I was going to do with. So I kind of landed in a corporate role, and on the side I was always looking at like bodybuilding.com and fitness and nutrition magazines, and this was before we really had social media to do our like research, doing my air quotes, like, where we're doing all our research. So on the side, I was like really kind of digging into that. I started strength training myself. I will say again, like bodybuilding.com was a big resource. So I think was just wowed at like what the human body could do, and then learning more about nutrition and how that role played like such a big how nutrition played such a big role for people like preparing to compete, whether it was something like bodybuilding or getting into again like more endurance sports. I really felt like I started to understand how nutrition really became that unfair advantage. And as I was getting my personal training certification, that's really when I discovered what a registered dietitian was, and then eventually decided that that's really what I wanted to do. And once I completed that training, I kind of pivoted and went back to school to be a dietitian. So I was kind of back to college like several years later. And once I kind of passed my boards and then did some of my clinical training, I have worked mostly in weight management, for example, so kind of in and out of like retail and clinical weight management. So thinking about like, going to the doctor and getting prescribed like meal replacements and low calorie meal plans. And I just felt like very much a robot in that clinic role. So eventually I just like didn't want to be bound by protocols and left and really kind of opened my own business where I was working with individuals on nutrition. But then what always comes up is like that movement component. And, eventually rucking was something that I discovered. And that was something that just totally changed the game for me personally. It was something that I started to share about. I think initially I was really interested in it for the kind of compound effects where you're able to maybe put on a little bit of mass. Like rucking certainly isn't a replacement for strength training, but it really can help kind of lean you out. And it's like fun cardio if there is such a thing. So I feel like rucking is one of those things, um, walking with weight, which I know we'll get into today, but that was one thing that really kind of became something that transformed me physically, but then I think also my mindset, and that was something I really wasn't expecting. So that was a unintended consequence in the best way. And I think that's what really has gotten me coming back and to be really consistent because when I think about my fitness journey personally, it was always kind of like in and out. It was like, going to the gym for 2 hour sessions or just like deep couch sitting. There was like kind of vacillating in and out. I think I just kind of went through these cycles of burnout, and rucking was one of those things that I just couldn't get enough of. And, haven't burnt out and don't anticipate that I will.
Yeah, rucking seems like one of those kind of good go-betweens. Because I have that same kind of thought process a lot of times. Like it's like an all-out training session, or it's like too low of a recovery. This is kind of that sweet spot that kind of like scratches that itch a lot of times because it's not something that requires a lot of thinking or like kind of forethought. You're throwing a ruck on, or you're throwing a vest on, weighted vest on, and you're really just going for a walk. You can be on the phone, you can do nothing, you can go in nature, you can kind of go anywhere. I know we'll talk about it more, but that's like that perfect kind of blend between the two. But it's interesting to kind of see where you started from and like all the different kind of avenues that got you to starting to learn and kind of get more fascinated with physical training, like fitness, health and wellness, and bodybuilding.com, and like some of those like magazines and like those like early on websites seem like the perfect one to kind of blend that fitness and health and wellness and nutrition side. And I think that's one thing that a lot of strength coaches or like people outside of the bodybuilding world, like powerlifters and strongmen, are probably notorious. Like it's been taking a lot longer for nutrition to start to kind of get added into their repertoire. You starting to see what some guys now, like, I mean, Brian Shaw, like, leaned down, I think 2 years ago and really started taking nutrition focus. Like, Thor has abs at like 6'9", which is crazy. And it used to only be bodybuilding where, like, hey, nutrition is only important for this. It's super interesting to kind of see that. Where do you see that blend between the kind of nutrition side of things and movement and fitness, and like for you, like how do you blend those best together for an athlete or a client to understand that one without the other is not going to really get the job done?
Yeah, I think I always kind of see where they're at because I feel like usually somebody has a pretty solid footing in one or the other and they're interested in one. So for example, maybe they really have their like fitness routine or they're in the strength game, but they want to really work on the nutrition because I see so many times like people are they're almost using the amount of activity that they're doing to just like eat like crap. I know I'm like, yeah, I know you're nodding, and I know there's probably a lot of listeners that can relate, but I feel like it just gives you a little bit more flexibility. Like, in all honesty, like when you're really training hard and training, high volume, you do have that flexibility, which is nice. But I do find where people like once they really do start to dial in nutrition, like thinking about this client who's running a 100 miler today, like she did an ultra marathon. I think it was this time last year or maybe a year and a half ago. And she had kind of like admitted, like, this, for example, was, she was training really hard. So she just wasn't as dialed in with nutrition. When it came to this race, like, one of her big goals was she's like, I want to still approach it. Like, of course, we're going to need more carbohydrates, but I really want to use a lot more like whole foods. And for lack of a better term, like kind of eat a lot more clean. And she has done that. And she texted me the other day. She's like at one of her lowest weights, but she still feels amazing. Like, I think that's one thing too, is like weight loss isn't always going to be like a result of it, whether you're training hard or whether your nutrition's on point, like kind of finding that balance. Like I see, for example, like a lot of the folks that I work with, so many people are under eating. And when we do start to really work on nutrition, they're able to train harder as well. So I don't know if I really answered your question. Yeah.
No, that's perfect. I'll take that. That's
Yeah.
at this point, like just listening to everything you were saying, like my question doesn't really matter. But kind of on the topic of like just using nutrition properly and kind of feeling your performance or feeling what you have going on. you've worked like you talked about like your background kind of first getting started in like retail and like clinical and then now kind of venturing off on your own. And then I'm sure now you're probably working with a vast array of clients the same way. You have some athletes, you have some that are just kind of general weight loss and everything. But there's got to be like some universal kind of truths across like all those populations. Like what is usually kind of like your first go-to step when you're going to approach having a conversation with someone that is kind of seeking your advice? Um, and then like where do people like where's kind of like where you see all these groups like breaking point where they finally end up reaching out for some assistance?
Yeah. I think what I see like working with a lot of folks who like are focused on maybe like general health or like weight loss, for example, I think that is almost like a byproduct of their bigger goal of wanting to feel better or maybe perform at a higher level. And I think when I'm always meeting with somebody, I'm always meeting them where they're at. Like, I want to know, like, what is your sleep like? What's your stress? Like, I really try to get a big picture and not just look at food because the last thing you'll ever get from me is like a detailed meal plan. Because I feel like sure that will work in the short term. Like I could tell you, you know, measurements and what to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But, you know, once you stop doing that, you're really going to like flounder. And I think when I think of like sustainable results, like I always want to kind of chip away at things versus just completely overhauling things overnight. And I think that that's just not like in our culture. Like we kind of want like we want everything written out for us. We want to do like all or nothing a lot of times. So it can be very uncomfortable. But I will say when I look at like the individual person to like one tool that I love using is continuous glucose monitors. And that really helps us see not only how food is playing a really big role in something like their blood sugar, but we can also see things like stress. We can see like how sleep or lack of sleep impacts their blood sugar levels. And then exercise as well. So when I see people like just feeling like maybe they just feel awful like mid workout, we can really see really quickly is their blood sugar tanking mid workout? Do we need to play with the pre or post workout nutrition to kind of even some things out or really maximize their recovery? So it's hard to pick out like some universal truths, I will say, because I feel like some of the work that I'm doing is like very individualized. But I think it's all just kind of getting like that good assessment and just trying again to not overhaul everything overnight. But I know that that's very uncomfortable for a lot of people because they just want to do that. And oftentimes it's like, it's just not sustainable, maybe in the long term.
Yeah, you're right. Like it's not a quick fix because you also didn't get to that position that you're in fast. It might seem fast, but it's just kind of like a realization over time of maybe a couple months down the road, looking in the mirror and realizing, whoa, like I'm unrecognizable. But it's a lot of different factors that go into place, like as you're kind of saying, that go into just nutrition. It's not just oh, well, cook this, eat this, cook it this way, like you'll be fine. Like there's so many other factors go in place that end up when you start following like routines like that or diets or kind of recipes where it's just like follow this, like you might be under eating, you might be overeating, you might not know how you respond to those different things. You might have kind of mental barriers or habits that of nutritional timing or things that you kind of binge on. And then I like how you talk about like the monitoring because it affects everybody differently too. And that's one of the harder parts, but I think that's one of the things that ends up clicking for people that have like in either their emotional response or like some sort of issue with food and exercise is they don't see the correlation and they kind of need to see like the proof is in the pudding a little bit. And when you can kind of give them a monitor, you can show them how lethargic they are or how much sleep they're getting back again, then that's enough to like kind of help the momentum build and then continue to chip away because you're not going to get good sustainable results if you're like yo-yo dieting or you're just trying to quick fix like suck the fat out, or whatever
Exactly.
have you.
Yeah. And I will say one thing I like too is it's like having the glucose monitor on, it's an excellent accountability tool because I can see everything. And when I'm like locked onto your arm, like with the sensor, and I can see like what your blood sugar is doing, even if you don't log a meal, it's like I can see pretty clearly if like your blood sugar is jumping up. And so there's great accountability there. But I think to maybe piggyback on that too, it's one thing that I really like to help people kind of connect with that natural intuition because how you were talking earlier, I think like eating according to a list or a specific meal plan. It's like we really kind of lose touch with maybe it's like natural hunger cues or like you said, like just really feeling like crap, for example, like mid-afternoon. It's like we can pretty quickly see trends or tie maybe how you feel, like whether it's anxiety, feelings of fatigue, like just general like brain fog. I'm surprised at how much we're actually able to tie that to some blood sugar trends. And if we're able to smooth things out, I feel like we really get the snowball rolling in the right direction when you're not like white knuckling it, or if when you have energy or when you're able to sleep better, it's like all of that tends to compound. And I think that really shows up in your performance too.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about. Like I've never had any of the tracking, but I can clearly see, I know for myself and seeing from other people just like the emotional response and kind of the feelings that you have associated with like hunger or how you're feeling that day, and then how you respond with what you eat or how much you eat or what time you eat, and being able to kind of associate like blood markers or like glucose monitoring as well. When you can do that, you can almost like, oh, associate, oh, well, this is why I'm getting this response. I don't really need to do this. Like you can almost block out the feeling because of understanding why you're feeling or why you feel that way is a direct response your body is trying to exhibit to you. It's a sign.
Yeah. I would say like one classic example too, like is just like lack of sleep, I should say. Like when you think of just like one bad night of sleep, it's not like you want chicken rice and broccoli the next day. It's like you want like quick, fast carbs, like sugary things. And that's always really interesting, just how even like one night of short or not great sleep can just really wreck your appetite. And I think that can be very validating too. Like when you have that data, it helps maybe prioritize things like sleep or really intervene on things like stress, for example, because we can count grams of protein, we can count calories, but we can't really like quantify our stress always. Like there's a lot of sleep trackers now, but I think when you can really see that physiological impact and kind of pop the hood and see that, okay, well, slept short yesterday. Here's what I'm going to do to be proactive since I know I'm going to be just like, you know, reaching for anything today. I'm going to start with like a high protein breakfast and really kind of set yourself up for the rest of the day too.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good way to do it. And I know a lot of people have fallen victim to that or have been in those situations too. So it's easy to kind of relate to that. And understanding why you're in that way and like understanding that you've been through it, like you kind of, it gives you a little bit more tools to kind of counteract it and start to address it in a positive manner, which is great. So when it comes to like the nutritional side and like health, wellness, training, performance side, like for you, which was it, like the chicken or the egg? Like which came first, like personal training, nutrition? Like which was the one that really sparked it? And then I know you've been able to balance the two, and I'm sure that really helps with a lot of your clients that come into you because again, you're bridging the gap between the nutritional side and like the dietetics and like what's happening with their body, but also health and wellness and performance, like what they need to do to sustain what they're eating and be able to balance them. So like for you, which one was first? And then like how do you kind of incorporate that coaching side with your nutritional side as an RD?
Yeah, I think nutrition maybe might have come first. It's hard because I feel like it all kind of happened around the same time. And again, it was like it ebbed and flowed. Like I felt like I was with nutrition, for example, it was like a lot of restriction and then, 100% the other way. But I would say with nutrition, for example, like the more I learned, the more confused I was, which, a lot of listeners can probably relate to. There's a lot of nutrition noise, and I think we just really overcomplicate things. So I felt like the more I learned about nutrition, the more I found that was contradicting. And that's essentially what kind of sent me back to be a dietitian. And then I still feel like that left me with the trying to not see food as like good and bad, for example, because the more you learn about it, you're like, okay, well, that is good and that is bad. But, trying to find that balance, if you will. And I think like my annoying um, way to counter that, maybe instead of thinking about foods as good or bad, it's like, because I get that a lot. I hate telling people I'm a dietitian like that. I don't like that when people are like, what do you do? And I was like, a dietitian. Like, I just know like something is they're gonna want me to confirm, like, what do you think about carnivore or keto or like GMOs, like whatever the flavor of the week is. But a lot of times I'm like, when I'm asked if something's healthy or if this food is bad, like my rebuttal to that is compared to what? Like essentially, like what are we comparing? Are we comparing like broccoli and a chocolate chip cookie, or what's X and Y compared to Z, for example? But so I would say maybe nutrition came a little bit before the fitness piece. It all kind of lined up again like around the same time, but I would say it layered on itself where I was interested in nutrition. I really started strength training more and just loved it because I just felt like I loved how empowered I felt, and it was just fun. Like, you get those newbie gains. You're just essentially like going up in weight really quickly. And that's where I found just like under eating a lot of times, like when you do start to add in a little bit more fuel or focus on nutrition, I feel like performance in that particular area is like really your unfair advantage is nutrition when you're able to fuel better and essentially get better results in the long run.
Yeah, it's got to be a fun way when you're kind of learning to, I guess, like going through that program is kind of testing those things on yourself too. It's like, oh,
Yes. It's
well,
like
I
N equals
enjoy
one.
training.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's you're like, oh, I'm gonna see, I like doing this type of training. Let's see what happens when I eat like four sleeves of Oreos on it. Oh, that didn't probably go as well. It's like, okay, I can eat clean and see how it is. It's interesting because it's always nutrition is always going to be a part of training. And you could probably get by in a lot of areas, like just general population, why very little exercise, but eating very well. So now when you're starting to deal with people that are coming to you that are probably a little bit more active or maybe trying to lose weight and get more fit, they have to also exercise in order to like really kind of maximize their results. So like how do you kind of like what are some of kind of the misconceptions that end up coming about like with trying to get someone, I guess, fit when it comes to like balancing their training and then adding in some nutrition because it's got to be very mental too, and it's got to be like very slow steps when you're looking at essentially those three categories, like how they respond physically, like where they're at and what they can do right now, and then nutritionally what they're doing. Like how do you kind of step approach and step load those three different things so you don't maybe overwhelm them and again it can stay sustainable.
Yeah. I would say usually we're kind of working on like maybe two, three things like max at a time. So again, like when I get that initial assessment, it's like, okay, here's what I'm seeing. Like my goal is to kind of assess and really tackle, I would say, like the low hanging fruit first. Cause I think people like come to me and it's not like everything's going like honky dory and things are going awesome when people come to me. It's like they have like some sort of goal in mind. And usually I'll try to simplify. It's like, what's two or three things that we can work on. Maybe I'll point out, like, here's the low hanging fruit that I see. We can really focus on these areas. Like, maybe it's increasing protein. You've already got maybe this routine. Can we go to two strength training sessions a day or a week? So I'm trying to kind of help them balance like what's going to be the best use of their time as we kind of scale things up. And I think kind of what you were alluding to, like helping people find like, I'm thinking of most people like they have a lot of competing commitments, like what's going to be the best use of time. And I think when I see like in the fitness space now, it's like strength, strength, strength. It's like lift weights, lift weights. But I think we're kind of losing that it's not just cardio or weights, for example. Like I feel like we are like seeing some polarization, like where you have to like choose one thing or the other when it's like, okay, we can do a variety of things. I will say that this is one reason I love rucking too, because you get the best of both worlds with like strength and cardio. And where was I going with this? I wanted to get to strength training and muscle, but I do love like the bigger conversation in fitness too, just thinking about like general health and building muscle. And I feel like now we are really seeing that shift in like the longevity space, for example, like just seeing how things like having more muscle mass is going to set you up better for, living longer and living better, like quality of life, for example. So, again, I feel like I kind of go off on some of your questions. So feel free to like rope me back in here, but
No, that's perfect. That's perfect.
yeah.
That's a great segue to kind of get into a lot of what we wanted to talk about. Like you already said, like the best of both worlds for a lot of these people that are coming to you is rucking because you are able to kind of load systemically like their body and be able to do some cardio and like get the heart rate up in a different manner. So it's pretty simple too, and you can progress it in different manners. You can like extend the distance, you can extend the weight that they're doing. Like there's all these different things. So let's kind of touch on the book and everything, like Ruck Fit, like build strength and endurance by walking with weight. Like what got you into rucking, and then why? Why do you think like what was the point about writing a book? Like what was kind of the primary goal for you?
Yeah. I will say what got me into rucking, I heard about it on a podcast actually. I was listening to The Drive with Dr. Peter Attia, and he had Michael Easter on. He was promoting his book at the time, Comfort Crisis, and I think it's maybe like the last chapter. Excellent book, by the way. So if you haven't read Comfort Crisis, it's really good. But he talks about rucking, and they're just like very briefly. So it had kind of come up in their conversation, and this was like mid-pandemic when I heard about it. And, at that time, it's like everything was like kind of locked down and social distancing, and, everybody's mental health was just in the tank essentially. And at that time, I was like working in healthcare. So just like feeling like just very mentally, I think, burned out. And what I loved about rucking, it was just like accessible. It got me outside. It was like something I could do with equipment I already had. So I grabbed a backpack. I wrapped a 10-pound dumbbell in a towel, shoved it in my backpack, and like went for a walk. And I think initially I got into it for like the physical benefits, just to really start to like, I love to walk and be outside. But this was, like you said, you can kind of dial up that intensity and really like kind of challenge yourself and, um, kind of push that pace a little bit. You can push the distance. Maybe it's adding more weight. So I love that flexibility of it. And really, once I like started to get outside more, I feel like I noticed the difference like immensely in my mental health. So I initially started out just for those physical benefits, just to kind of lean out, like build up my cardiovascular endurance and just kind of get back into fitness. But what kept me coming back was just like that mental clarity. I felt like it just got me like out of my head a lot. And it's something that I always preach now because of the accessibility. I think sometimes, whether it was again like post pandemic and everybody has their home gyms now, it's like one way to get some sort of like cardiovascular without getting a gym membership. It gets you outside. I think so often we just spend so much time like indoors and don't always like get that time in nature that we used to get or used to have. And yeah, you can be on a treadmill all day long, but I still feel like it's not the same as like throwing your ruck on and just going out.
Yeah, that's great. There's a lot of benefits to it too, and it'll be interesting to kind of talk on because I want to get more your thoughts on it too because you can correct me if I'm wrong. You're kind of looking at the lens for this for people that have maybe never done it before, or maybe that are looking for some maybe more novel like physical benefits, or looking for kind of a break in the monotony or something that's accessible, like we said, for them to go out and get in nature, kind of have some mental clarity, like escape in a way. And it's an easier barrier of entry, I think, when it comes to a lot of things. And again, like we said, it's scalable in a lot of aspects. And like I ruck because I have to, like for the army. So I have a lot of times where It's set distances, it's unset distances. You don't know the weight, you do know the weight. They're timed rucks. Like the loadouts are different, the terrain is different, but you don't have to ruck in that manner all the time. And you could scale it back and you can go on the road, you can go on a treadmill if you want, you can do all these things. So when it kind of comes to that, what are kind of your prescriptions when you're looking at maybe giving this as a training plan for someone like maybe that has no fitness background or little very fitness background or has different weight loss goals? Like, where's kind of your starting point when it comes to kind of adding this into a program? So it kind of shows that anybody can do it, but the benefits can be extrapolated.
Yeah. And my goal with the book, I would say, is like approaching or putting rucking in a spotlight for civilians, I guess. Like, just like you said, a lot of beginners, because I think when we look at like the history of rucking, it's traditionally very military, like it stems from the military training. And we see like, lots of like young, fit men carrying just like crazy amounts of weight, which I think can be very intimidating for people. And I just wanted to kind of scale that back and just make rucking more approachable for people. So usually when I'm thinking of it as like more prescriptive, somebody starting out and just coming into it, usually when I'm thinking about like starting weights, for example, for women, usually that looks like anywhere from like 10 to 15 pounds for men, depending on their fitness level. Maybe it's 15 to 20. It really kind of depends where somebody's starting at. And like you said, the distance can really change as well. So I wouldn't recommend like rucking for your first time for like 5 miles. Like maybe keep it to, no more than a couple of miles, see how you feel because it does change your posture. And I'd love to hear just about like where you started out in the military because I know before we hopped on, it's like it'll be really fun to see like kind of my like Gen Pop point of view versus like, your experience in the military. But kind of going back to the prescription, I would say again, like men and women kind of weights can vary depending on their fitness level, but then also maybe like no more than 2 or 3 times a week starting out. And again, just kind of seeing how you feel. You had mentioned we can scale up weight, we can play with distance or time. One thing that hasn't come up is incline, and that's something that can really change the difficulty too. So you had mentioned like terrain. If you get any kind of incline or hills, I feel like even more so than weight, that's another way to really scale up the intensity. But I would recommend like not trying to change all the variables at once, like maybe playing with one or two of those before you go all in. Because I think the biggest thing is to not get injured too.
Yeah, that's I think the big thing too. I think a lot of people look at rucking and they see it from the military side and like that's maybe all they know, but there's so many benefits that you can get from just scaling it back. The same with anything. Like people when CrossFit first came out, like wanted to follow CrossFit's plan and like it's great in for what you're using it for, but it wasn't initially scalable for everyday people to go in that had no training background. So no matter what approach you take, like you should still be able to back it off and work with a beginner in some aspects too. So it's great that it's able to do that. Yeah, it does have differences like when it comes to the military side with what it is because like you're kind of thrown into it and it's more of an expectation and there are parameters that are already set in place like it's this time this distance like this is a standard that must be accomplished, so if you don't meet that standard you're not getting there. But for anybody that's trying to just look for general health benefits for weight loss, for physique changes and things like that, you can manipulate all these things at your own pace and program it in and still see mass benefits. Like so when you kind of go to prescribe it for people, like how consistent, like you talked about 1 to 2 times a week as they're kind of scaling it up, and then kind of working on that low end for male and females differently based off of that. But what can you kind of expect from some of like those benefits when you're looking at rucking, doing it on a consistent basis?
Yeah, I would say one of the things I hear from like my clients the most is like they just feel a lot leaner and a lot stronger. So like rucking a lot of times like if you've got some extra fluff, it can help you get rid of that. If you feel like maybe a little frail or just like under muscled, it can help you, maybe lean out and put a little bit of mass on. Again, it's like not going to replace formal strength training, But I would say too, like thinking about, like we talked about minimum weights, like a lot of times, like max weights, you don't have to ruck with military amounts of weight to get the benefit of rucking. I just want to make that clear too. Like a lot of times it's like maybe you're looking at an upper end of maybe 30% of your body weight, or, depending on the person, like maybe no more than 50 pounds or so. It can really depend because I see some people like, I'm thinking about something I saw on social media, and it was some guy on the treadmill rucking with like 100 pounds and just terrible posture. Just like any sort of strength training, it's like you really want to work on your form and your posture before you start to increase that load. And benefit wise, I would say so you can kind of help lean you out, maybe put a little bit of mass on. Bone density is another one too. So rucking is weight bearing exercise like strength training. So you have that weight on your torso. It can help with core strength, but it can also help provide that stimulus for your skeleton as well. So when you get that extra force without the impact, which is nice. So when you think about like running compared to rucking, running's going to put a lot more force on your joints, whereas rucking's going to be a lot more low impact, but you still get some of those benefits as well. I would say, mental, like emotional wise, like we talked a little bit about just getting outside, like getting that sun exposure. A lot of people are walking around like deficient in vitamin D. So if you're getting outside and getting some sunshine like that can really help sync your circadian rhythm, help with the mental clarity as well, too.
I like it. Nice. It's a great kind of way to do just kind of get outside of maybe traditional training that for some people might not be accustomed to, or it's a little bit different. And I'm sure with maybe some of your remote clients or anybody that you're working with distance, this is probably a little bit easier to kind of like get them first involved in training too, because outside of posture and then kind of manipulating those variables and making sure they have the right equipment and kind of adjusting based off their heart rate or the time that it's taking them to complete certain distances, things of that nature, you don't really have to kind of coach anybody up on it. It's a quiet drag for however long it's going to be. So you're kind of addressing stuff on the front and back end, but the barrier of entry, like we said, is so minimal that this might be the key for a lot of your clients that might be like even a little bit further away from doing strength training as a benefit. Like some people might be have never trained before, and what's going to be more beneficial for them, being able to ruck with 10 or 15 pounds for 2 miles in the morning and a mile at night, or try to goblet squat with 5 pound dumbbells because they lack the mobility, they don't know how to do it, like their joints already hurt, but they're already walking. So this has got to be like an easier starting point. So is that kind of how you approach it? And then when it comes to like kind of adding a little bit more traditional strength training in, how do you make sure that you're still balancing the effect that you're going to get from rucking being involved in that weekly program?
Yeah, I would say, like you said, like rucking is usually the starting point, and then oftentimes, like clients get that itch, like all of a sudden they want to turn like every single walk into a ruck, which like some people have to hold back a little bit. So again, like usually it looks like like 2 to 3 times a week initially, and then when they get to that point where they're really ready to incorporate other things, then we're building in, maybe other strength exercises. So that could look like even using their ruck like as their, resistance. So you could, like, for example, wear your ruck, knock out some lunges, maybe you're sandwiching your ruck with, things like body weight squats or push-ups and pull-ups. So you can actually wear your ruck or, use it to press. So that's the nice thing too, depending on their resources. If they, don't have a gym membership, this is something that you can really leverage for that cardiovascular. But then if you really want to start to expand on the strength, we can use one piece of equipment and get multiple modalities out of it
I
too.
like it. Hey, so now you are an RD, so now like on top of all the rucking too, this is a little bit different for people that are traditionally training and maybe not like the first couple weeks where someone's really getting started learning how to ruck. But then what kind of advice do you have for them for maybe some of these longer duration rucks where they need to start being a little bit more cognizant of like nutrition, like electrolytes, water intake, kind of planning and preparing for all those things because it starts to have a little bit more of effect when you're going to stretch out a training session to be as long as it potentially could. And then you throw different elements on it. Like you're up in Minnesota, it's a lot colder than it is in Florida right now. But I guarantee it's probably a lot more humid down here than it is up there. So where do those things start to come into play? And then where do you start like kind of informing your clients what to do and how much kind of feedback do they have to provide you how they feel on a ruck? Because just saying one prescription to someone for a ruck is vastly different than someone else, and preference comes into play too. I'll tell you that for sure.
Yeah. Definitely. And it's definitely not one size fits all, like you said. And I think a lot of people are surprised. Like, usually, if your workout's 60 minutes or less, so like an hour or less, there's not a lot that we're like really troubleshooting beforehand. Like you had mentioned, fluid, like hydration's huge, whether it's fluid and electrolytes. I think, regardless of length, those are some things that I really like to kind of bring in, especially like you said, like humidity or hot temperatures, especially if you're using something like a weighted vest, for example. So something that's like covering your front and your back, where you have like the weight plates that kind of slip in the front and back. Like heat dissipation can be maybe not as great with that compared to a ruck where you have like your pack and your chest is kind of exposed. You can let some of that heat out, especially in like your climate where it's hot and humid. So hydration, electrolytes are huge when we're getting into workouts that are like 60 minutes or 90 minutes and greater, especially if they're like, high intensity, or maybe there's a lot of like terrain, so elevation, ups and downs. Then we're probably looking at something like, a mix of protein and carbs, like before and after. So on the front end, really, that's going to help provide fuel depending on the length. So if we're getting, maybe 90 minutes to 2 hours, then we're probably looking at like incorporating some intra workout things as well. So typically, like some fast digesting carbohydrates, whether it's, a granola bar, like that's a great time to like really implement some of those quick carbs, like for lack of a better term, like the unclean food. So if you're, want gummy bears or graham crackers, like some of those really quick digesting things, like intra workout or immediately post workout, especially a long, like, draining session. Those are some really good times to like keep your keep that glucose going, but then on the back end of a workout, also replenish some of those glycogen stores. So usually on those longer training sessions, we're sandwiching their rucks with something like a mix of protein and carbs. And then depending on the length, really kind of looking at electrolytes and then also maybe some quick carbs in between too.
I like it. Yeah, that's helpful too, because it's very different like how some people respond to it. And I've tried it so many different ways on some of the longer rucks, and I've seen humidity, temperature, and just like where we are have such a big impact on what it is. And if you haven't stretched out for a distance or you're not going for a certain time or the weight isn't super heavy and you're not challenging yourself on some of those things, you don't realize like the true effect until it's too late. And that has happened a couple times where I know within it, and I'm sure it happens with marathoners and things and people that are doing triathlons, but I'm not doing that. I don't want to do that stuff. So I'm out of that boat, but I've hit a couple when I'm getting like it's like a 12 plus mile ruck and I'm hitting like 8 or 9 and I either forgot to do something or hydration wasn't great leading into it or the night before, and I'm hitting a wall. And at that point, like, I don't care if I have 5 pounds of gummy bears, it's probably way too late at that point. So when it comes to like something like that, where maybe you're kind of redlining it a little bit with someone, or if you have any of the clients that are kind of trying to push the tempo and push the intensity, the volume a little bit more, like how much are you trying to like kind of increase that intensity or stretch them out or have them start to kind of keep a natural kind of notebook about what they're doing to give you feedback so that you can kind of dial in for them. Because like when we're coaching, you can coach technique and you're looking at a squat, you're looking at mechanics, you're looking at how they bench, like all those movement patterns you can do. But I think like preparation, mindset, maybe how you pack your ruck, footwear, like all those kind of other things are the big key factors that come into performance for that. Do you see anything else as like a hindrance or like a something that really could make or break how well you perform? And then how do you kind of address that and kind of coach up your individuals that are looking to be a little bit more successful or use this as a real training tool often?
Yeah, I would say like in the scenario you brought up, like where you just like you hit that wall, you're bonking. Like if you're like for runners, I feel like that's a common term. Like there's no coming back from that. It's the most awful feeling. So it's like usually it's like if you can get ahead of it. Like again, I'm thinking of my one client. She's not. This isn't for like she's not rucking today, but I would use maybe a similar example where if you know you're going to be out for say a few hours like you're starting sooner than later. So maybe you're starting like that fueling, like whether it's just like slamming some electrolytes like 30 minutes in, like getting some of those quicker carbs going like sooner than later is going to do you so much better than like trying to catch up on the back end. So I'm thinking about like back in like over Labor Day weekend, I went to like Go Ruck hosted their first like women's event in Costa Rica, and we did this like 8 mile ruck in the jungle, which felt like the whole thing was uphill. I swear to God. But we were just like, I mean, you're sweating buckets because it's April or it's August and it's Costa Rica and just the humidity. And I think a lot of us were like feeling that. So we stopped, and I feel like just the hydration and electrolytes, like getting some of that in your system, like again, sooner than later, that can really help, I think, turn the ship around if you feel like you're starting to approach that wall or maybe really start to feel fatigued and like getting some of those again quicker things in. So if you're using like rucking as that, kind of, I guess, point for really pushing endurance, maybe that like 30-minute mark or so. For some people, maybe you're starting a little bit early, maybe it's a little bit later, but again, trying to stay ahead because once you fall behind, it's really, really hard to catch up.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Having kind of I like to back plan for all those times we have rucks, and like we usually know what the times are going to be, and we know what kind of the cutoff times are to whatever we have back on the rest of the day, like to kind of finish the session and then go on to whatever duties we have the rest of the day. So you kind of back plan like, oh, if we're starting at like 4 a.m., like, oh, what time am I going to bed? Okay, well, what time I'm waking up to warm up? What time am I waking up to eat? What time? Because I've already packed out the ruck. I've already packed out like the things I'm going to eat, like water source, and all those things are kind of ready. But like I'm starting to look at times more so too and making note of that. And I think it just comes with a little bit of preparation and a little bit of kind of trial and error to see what works for you. Um, but it's still at some point in time gets easier, but it never gets easier. So it's always fun to do. Um, when we're talking about like some of this stuff and you have different people kind of getting introduced to it or maybe have done it before and now are trying to incorporate it into training along with the kind of nutritional guidance and stuff that you're also providing them, are there any like metrics that you're kind of tracking with them? Or kind of besides maybe weight, distance, or time, like, or markers that you see as a point for someone to maybe progress to a different distance or progress to like a different duration, like so that you can keep it sustainable and safe? Because again, like this isn't a job task for people. This is exercise. This is physical training. This is weight loss. It's not like live or die with this training. So how do you kind of make it continue to be fun, but also like make sure that if they're qualified and they're capable, they can kind of move on to something that they've adapted to and then progressively overload them?
I love mileage as a goal just because I think it's something easy to track and it's like fun. Like I have my little post-it notes and like kind of every time I go over that mile mark, it's like, okay, I can add another tick mark to mine. But the reason I like that too is because that could be spread out across the week, or maybe it's a couple like longer rucks or training sessions. So I feel like you can kind of really flex that. But then also in the scope of progressive overload, it's like maybe you're adding like a couple miles a week or whatever that looks like. I did kind of build out some training plans in the book too. So everything from like think about like couch to 5K for somebody that's beginner. And then I do have like a 10K and a 25K plan with like recommended mileage. The only thing is like weight can tend to vary. And I will say, like, especially with longer rucks, like you don't want every ruck to be a heavy ruck. So I'll say that again. Like, you don't want every ruck to be a heavy ruck, especially like some of those longer ones. Cause like you were mentioning, like, okay, now I'm like 2 hours in, like, where am I going to drop like weight plates or something like that? Like, you're coming home with what you packed in, right? And, your options get a little bit limited. So if you're really kind of playing with distance, I would say at first trying to keep it light and then adding weight as you get more comfortable with those longer distances. I know there are some apps, like a lot of times, like fitness trackers, we don't have a rucking option, except I think Garmin just added it on maybe a couple of their watches. But there are apps like Ruckwell, for example, and you can plug in like what your ruck weight was, and then it will like use GPS tracking. And then at the end, it gives you like ruck power, I believe is the metric. And then you could really kind of log something like that too, which kind of encompasses the weight, but then also figures in the distance as well. I haven't personally used that, but just kind of thinking through other things outside of mileage, I feel like that ruck power from the Ruckwell app could be something where it really kind of factors in the weight part as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard of that. I'll have to check that one out. But that definitely is that's kind of one of the fun things about rucking too. If you're going out in the woods or you're going out somewhere kind of scenic, it's like, yeah, you should probably plan your route. And either have a turnaround point or if you're doing a loop, realize that at some point in time you're gonna have to come back. Um, so either have a backup plan about who's gonna come get you if it goes sideways a little bit, or you're just
Or
gonna
plan an
have,
out and back, maybe
yeah,
like maybe it's not a loop. And
yeah,
especially like you said, if it's a new trail or something, like I don't know, that could be considered. Like I like doing like maybe one like sucky ruck is what I like to call like a week. So maybe you're really pushing weight, pushing distance, maybe a little bit of both. But I wouldn't do like more than like one really sucky ruck a week just to give your body time to recover. But then also, there's going to be other training that you're probably doing too, whether it's mobility or strength. And I think you can certainly have the point where it's diminishing returns and then you're, really kind of burning the candle at both ends and not reaping those max benefits if you've just got too many stressors going.
oh, for sure. Do you see any drawbacks like when it comes to kind of rucking, or have you heard of anything, even if it's anecdotally yourself? Because I know the big thing that we've always dealt with, and I saw it like I've seen it different ways. Obviously, people not being prepared at basic and different like selection courses and just the weight, the amount, the distance, or it's just like compounding effects of something happening. And like a lot of females I've seen with like fractured hips. For guys, it's just like herniated discs and it's just too much, or it's like a fall in an area. And that's like a different kind of concern. But I think generally when I'm just like on the road or I go out with like some of like my tactical athletes or other individuals to do it is just a lack of mobility, like when it's all said and done. Have you seen anything else or like found ways to kind of maybe address the things that you commonly see so that rucking doesn't become like a hindrance where it would kind of shy someone away from it?
Yeah, usually it's the ego that like needs a little bit of talking to. I would say like usually women, I'm like pushing them to do more. It's like, okay, you've been rucking with like 15 pounds for 3 months now. Let's like try 20 or try to increase things. Whereas I feel like men, on the other hand, it's like, okay, maybe don't start out with 40 pounds. Like, let's start out with 20 and really like work on the mechanics and kind of increasing over time. So I would say a lot of times I see people ruck too hard too fast And then maybe to add to that, kind of thinking about equipment, I feel like shoes is one thing that easily gets bypassed too. So not thinking about like proper footwear, because I feel like if you're not like setting your foundation with your feet, you can really, you know, you can really get yourself into trouble if you're, getting lots of blisters or you don't have like great support. Like if you think of that extra weight, like that's going to certainly transfer to your feet as well. Even though it is low impact, you can see, the impact if you don't have good shoes.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, repetitively over time, that's going to make a big difference. So don't skip out on shoes and probably wear them in before you just pop them out of the box because that's the
Yes,
dumbest thing you could do. Bring extra socks
exactly.
too. It's funny too, because like thinking about it, it's like we'll sit in there and I know all the times that we've gone on long rucks or there've been rucks that are like timed, like they're no shit, you have to get this done. It's like we're sitting there and we joke with guys who are like ounces equal pounds all the time. And you've got guys that are like taking tape off, they're taking name tags off. Like you're getting it to exactly what it says it is because you don't need to carry anything else. And then like if you're humping out in the woods and we have like a training exercise or something, you want to bring the things that you need, but if you think you only need 4 batteries, you don't need to bring 10. So like anybody that's looking at trying to train like this too, like realize that extending the distances out, how you feel that day, like all the performance things that you need to do, like starting slower and then building up. Like you're doing a couple thousand steps depending on how far you're going. And that impact is going to make a lot of, it's either going to benefit you or it's going to negatively affect you based off how you kind of prepare or what weight you going into. And if you're not ready for it, like it's going to hit you like a ton of bricks when you're done. And then now you can't ruck for a couple weeks. So yeah, definitely think those progressions through as best as you can.
Yeah, and I'm terrible. I would say like stretching too. Like that's one of the things like you'll find out really quickly. Like for me, it's like my hips get really tight, but then your calves, like I feel like those always get very neglected. And then all of a sudden you're just like, ooh, you feel some of those spots that just like really kind of take the brunt too when you're rucking.
Oh, definitely. Hey, so we kind of talked about how to get into rucking a little bit too, but because you're on that side of it, you're on the nutrition side, you're on kind of the personal trainer side, you're consulting with individuals. What would you say is like advice for someone to kind of that wants to maybe get involved in um, to be a registered dietitian or nutrition? And then for those that are on that side, like how important was it to you for you to also have kind of like your personal training like certification too? Because you balance both the two and they bounce and play off each other rather than you just kind of referring out to someone. And it's not to say like I work with registered dietitians, physical therapists, athletic trainers, like everything on base here. And we have like those experts, but everybody in those like areas of expertise still have an understanding of what the other one's job is. But how important is it for you to like have a little bit of touch on both of those things? And how can someone really start if they want to get involved in nutrition?
Yeah. Well, and I like what you said, like kind of building that network, that referral network. I think that's nice because especially nowadays, like everybody is just like specializing or like really niching down. And I think it's nice when you can just like focus in, like dial in on one area and you're like, okay, well, I know a little bit about this. I can help get you started. But if you really want to, dial in this part of your program, like go see Nick or go see Kayla. So I do like having those people that you're kind of shuffling back and forth. But like for anybody that's interested in dietetics or nutrition, I would say a lot of my philosophy I've like learned probably after I got my credentials, to be honest. So I feel like I'm a little bit of maybe a rebel in that sense. I know there's just been a lot of things that I've changed my mind on, whether it's like, I think of some of the things that came down the pipeline in my education. So, like, eat low salt or don't eat red meat and, watch out for protein because it's going to, be taxing on your kidneys. It's like, no, no, no. So, I think I did learn a lot actually after I graduated. I'm hoping like some of that curriculum has changed a little bit. But what's nice is like very much like physicians, when you're practicing something like dietetics, throughout that clinical experience, you do get put into all kinds of different specialty areas. So it's like I went through bariatrics and GI and surgery and ICU. So you really get exposed to a lot. And within that, it's like you're going to find out what you like. And just as importantly, you're going to find out what you don't like. So I think that's almost like just as important as seeing like what really lights you up as you get exposed to a lot and you almost feel like you have to know everything initially. But what I find is that a lot of people kind of find their specialty areas. Like you had said, for me, it's kind of like working with my own practice and then kind of melding together nutrition and then also movement because I think the two of those are just, as you mentioned, it's kind of hard to have one without the other when you get people that are maybe beyond some of those beginner stages because usually when somebody's improving in one of those two areas they're curious about or want to start to push themselves in the other area. So one tends to come with the other, which I love.
Yeah, you talked about too, like your own practice too. Like what was kind of the reasoning like to kind of step away from like kind of that clinical, like that retail side and like kind of venture off on your own as an entrepreneur and like who's kind of your main focus when it comes to either the clientele that are reaching out to you or that you're working with your own business?
Yeah, I would say I was like tired of operating by protocols, like handing out 1,200 calorie meal plans. So I like to do things my way. So, and I think like working in the clinical setting, I think a lot of times like I didn't feel like I could exercise a lot of my education how I wanted to. So a couple examples, it's like you'd see somebody just like teetering on, diabetes, pre-diabetes to diabetes, or maybe they're, 2% away from full-on vitamin D deficiency, but I couldn't intervene and make a recommendation because they weren't deficient yet, or they didn't have diabetes yet. And that just like it irked me, let's just say, because I feel like a little bit of prevention goes a long way. So I ended up going on. So my practice is 100% online, and I would say I primarily work with women. A lot of people are like focused, I would say, primarily on I would say metabolic health, but then kind of weight loss as a byproduct of that. So, a lot of people have weight loss on their mind, but when I do my intake, it's funny because a lot of times I don't really see like a specific number. It's like, I want to feel better. I have an event I'm training for that I really want to do well with. It comes down, I think, to a lot of like looking at their whole lifestyle and just helping them feel better. The glucose monitoring certainly helps. So I would say a lot of people are interested just to see how that works. And I think in that space in particular, you get a lot of data and you don't know how to interpret it. So that's where I come in and really help you like identify like what is a good, glucose trend or what are some of those red flags. And something like a glucose monitor isn't something that you have to wear, 24/7, 365. It's like usually wear a few sensors, you're going to get a pretty good idea of what your trends look like, where we need to maybe tweak things, and then maybe you're wearing them once a year, once a quarter, just to kind of test things from there. So I would say a lot of people coming to me are interested in using that tool to really kind of see what their metabolic health is looking like too.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of like just a little course correction and just making sure that you're on the right track, but you hope with someone that's coming in to do that, they're not reliant on that yet, or they can avoid having to be reliant on those things that are like pre-diabetic or like maybe prone to those issues. So you can now better understand what you're doing, what the foods you're eating, the timing, the impact that it's going to have, so that you don't have to always constantly be checking to see what your levels are. So that's great. And it's cool to kind of see like being able to take all that background from all the different places you were and not kind of be confined to the rigidity of just this is how it has to be done. And I mean, those settings that you kind of need a little that by the book protocol, like you need to progress in this manner because they're maybe coming out of post-op or they're on a certain treatment plan or this is what the insurance is. But it's nice to kind of be able to work with people that are motivated, reaching out to you and have specific goals of that manner. So that's great. You got a lot on your plate. So It's cool to kind of see all the different things that you got going on and how they work and benefit each other. So awesome. Hey, well, like any good training session, we got to end the show with a finisher. So I got 4 quarters, 4 questions, and since we're doing so much rucking and conditioning, we'll have to hit overtime on the back end. But you can go rapid fire with any of them, or if you want to expand, feel free. But you ready for the first one?
I'm ready.
All right. Biggest influence in either the nutritional or coaching space, and for you, favorite athlete growing up.
Ooh, is this one question or is this two?
It's
Okay, because I
you're the
have
first
like,
person to ever ask me that,
yeah.
and like I could never like just dial in on one because I wanted to ask him rapid fire, but they turned in too long, so I just jam them together in one question.
Yeah, because you were saying like the influence and like Lane Norton came to mind. Like I love like Lane Norton and I know he's, going on his rants. And then I think athlete is like a whole different person. And I think of like, I don't know, being from Minnesota, I just like think like Chris Carter, just have to go a little like old school there.
All
So,
right. Yeah,
yeah.
they're two different questions, but they're still
Yeah.
considered number one. So
Yeah.
I'll keep them more straightforward going forward.
All
Um,
good.
Second one. All right. So when you're not kind of coaching, working with clients, rucking yourself, what are some of your hobbies that are outside of maybe athletics, nutrition, and like that health wellness kind of area?
Yeah, does cooking count? Like, I feel like sometimes I'm like making things and then I'm like, I should probably film this so I can put it on social media. But I do like to like just cook for the enjoyment out of it. And I'd say petting my cats, like and reading, like very like chill vibes here. Like that's probably one of my favorite ways. Like my husband and I just like we kind of we do a slow roll into the day and kind of slow roll out of the day. So we sandwich our day with just sipping our coffee and like petting our cats and reading our books. And I don't know that that's a hobby, but it's a favorite part of my day. But
Hey, that's anything
yeah,
that recharges you, you enjoy, like I'm rolling with it's a hobby, so
yeah.
we'll go with it. When you're not kind of doing all the things that you're doing right now, I know the book and probably writing that was taking up a big chunk of the time, but what do you think you would be doing if it weren't this kind of career path right now?
Ooh, that is a good one. I know something like that. This would maybe be like kind of dream job, but my husband and I like talked about doing like a travel vlog. Like you see everybody in their sprinter vans, like, documenting everything from like coast to coast. So we just like love to be outside and into the outdoors. So I feel like it would have to be something that involves nature and just being outside. And if there's a way to monetize that to pay your bills, then that would probably be me.
Hey, put the cats in those little space backpacks and take them on a ruck, and you'll probably be up to 1 million followers in a
Yeah, if you
week. In
saw
a
my
week.
cats too, they'd be like, "Yes, I don't need the 20-pound plate. Like I got 20 pounds of fluff that I could use." So,
Hey, there you go. That's saves a little time too. That's perfect.
yes.
Hey, so if you're going to set up like an ideal training day for yourself, and we could keep it on the ruck theme if you want to, um, but best training music, and I'm sure sometimes if you're rucking, you might not be listening to anything. But after all is said and done, like what is your favorite post-training meal look like?
Ooh, I would say for the music, it's usually Chevelle, I would say, and then my post-training meal. Whew, favorite, like, and this is something I'm overthinking it, I know, but it could be anything. It's not just like a matter of convenience.
Oh,
Yeah.
anything, anything. Yeah, that
Gotcha. I
you're
would
not.
say, yeah, like a good, like, I don't know, New York strip or something. So, yeah, team red meat here. So,
I
yeah.
like it. Hey, so last one I got for you for overtime. What is your favorite part of like being a dietitian and being like a personal trainer? Like, what's kind of the one thing that really keeps you motivated and going day in and day out on this career path?
Yeah, I would say it's my clients and the messages that I get from them. Like, I had like back-to-back meetings this morning, and I'm just thinking like some of the conversations or like a message that I got recently was just like, I feel like I can do this. And I think just like helping people build up that competence and confidence, because eventually, like, my goal is for them to be able to be able to feel confident in their fitness and nutrition like without me, and just to be able to build that plan where they're able to like execute that independently. And when I see that that's happening and they're really like getting some good reps in and feeling confident, like that just lights me up.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's nice to hear that from someone else too, because I think a lot of times, especially in the space where people are reaching out to you for your services and your expertise and they're paying you for those services, like you see people that want to just try to hold on to clients forever or like try to basically see how much you can get out of them and like keep them hooked on different programs and stuff like that. And it's awesome to hear other people with the same mindset say, ultimately, I want to give you all the tools for you to make the decisions, you to kind of be more educated and understand yourself more because I tell all my athletes all the time, like you know your body better than me and than I'll ever gonna know. I have some tools and expertise that can assist you, and then you have to make it work for yourself. And I want you to be able to do this without me. And like, sure, in a year, maybe your goals change or you want to make a touch point, and then we can readdress from there. But there should be a time where there's like a break where you're going out on your own and you have all the tools and you feel successful.
Absolutely. And I think too, it's like, even I like it when people are like, you can kind of feel it fizzle out. Like, okay, I think we've like done what we can together. And I am like never scared to say, like, okay, I think the next step for you is to, maybe meet with a therapist or, head this direction if you really want to train for this competition. So I feel like not being scared of that too, because, even if you're not working with them for years and years and years and years, it's like, you're going to be, they're going to become one of your biggest fans and give you more referrals too if you're taking good care of them and just not taking their money. So,
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
refer out to some great professionals too that can kind of continue that journey for them. That's awesome. And they're gonna thank you for it. Your business is probably gonna get better because they're gonna put in a good word about what your services were and like how well you did. So it's only going to come back around at some point. So awesome, Kayla. Well, I appreciate your time. It's been awesome to talk to you. Congratulations on the book and everything. Can you tell everybody where they can pick up the book? Because now it's on shelves and it's live, and where they can kind of follow you, reach out if they got further questions or kind of want to get some of your nutritional expertise as well.
Yeah, you can get the book on Amazon or at Barnes and Noble as well. As of this recording, I would say like I know it's online. It might depend kind of on stores, but you can find me at Kayla Girgen RD at all the things. I would say Instagram I'm probably most active, and you can just send me a DM there and I'll be the one to respond.
Awesome. Well, I
Yeah.
appreciate it again. Last thing before we go, because I wanted to ask this too. Rapid fire. What's your favorite ruck like to use? And then what's your favorite ruck snack?
Okay, so I just got the Rucker 4.0 from GoRuck with like the hip belt, and it has been a game changer.
All
Like
right.
I have been like really able to like progressively add weight, like even after rucking for so long, and it just feels a lot more comfortable. Like I can definitely feel it in my body and my legs like the day after. And then Ruck snack. Oh man, why is this such a hard one? It like trail mix sounds so boring, but I feel like that's just like a matter of convenience. So,
I mean, it's not
yeah.
a bad one. If I'm going fast, there's no
Yeah.
way I'm putting dry pretzels like or anything like that gets my mouth dry in there because it's just gonna
Yeah.
it's gonna frustrate me.
And I'll be like usually if I'm mid-rock, like I like something in liquid form. I would say like if I can put it in with my electrolytes, like I don't know, usually if it's a hard rock, I'm like the last thing I want to do sometimes is eat. So if it's
Mm.
something, I don't know, like more liquid, that can be helpful.
Oh, get
Yeah.
some get some caffeinated chocolate pudding and
Okay.
you'll love your life. It's the best thing ever.
Yeah, that sounds. I'm thinking back to like protein pudding. Who made it? It was like a yellow and blue packaging like eons ago. I don't know if they still
Oh,
make it, but it was like in again bodybuilding.com days. It tasted like it wasn't as good as probably what you're talking about.
I'll have to be on the lookout for that one.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, like I said, I appreciate you coming on today. Wish you much success with the book and everything and thanks again. It's been awesome to hear everything about your story, everything about the book and what you got going on. So thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.